Okay, let's go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's live stream. Welcome to everyone who's already here and already saying hello in the chat. So, hi, Cornelia and Heather and Eleanor, Dehala Werewolf Queen and Emerald Queen, and everyone else who is slowly joining us. Hopefully, you can hear me okay. My brain's a bit slow this morning, so I think I've remembered everything. And yeah, it's a Q&A, so let me know in the comments if you have any questions and we will go from there. So, yay, it's working. I wasn't sure if I would be able to do today's live stream. Wow, it's like 1 minute in and I'm already struggling with words. Let's see how we go. Yeah, I've had quite a few incapacitating headaches this week. So I've decided let's turn up and put on the lights and see what happens. And hopefully it can work. Interestingly, it's funny what is easy and what's difficult. So the things that I've done the most often have such a muscle memory routine that it's actually not too bad. Some people might think, well, why are you doing a YouTube live if you've got a almost incapacitating headache and can barely look at the screen? So I'm going to try and read the comments with one eye and see if I can still do that. But I've done this setup so many times. I've been recording videos every week for 10 years. It means that it's actually relatively easy because my brain knows what to do. I know how to set it up. I know what I need. I haven't forgotten anything today, I don't think. So yeah, I find that interesting. And then something slightly different, like having to respond to a text message or having to think of something new to say, is more difficult. Anyway, so I am going to monitor the chat for questions, and I guess in the meantime, I'll see if I can give you a bit of an update on some stuff that I've been doing. Firstly, this week has just been really rough. So hence this today. So I think I mentioned that. We'll just see how we go. I don't know if I usually try and do like an hour or so for a live stream, but yeah, we'll see how today goes. But I'll share a couple of updates with you, and maybe if there are some interesting questions that will help wake my brain up a little bit. So I've got an interesting question here, which I will come back to in a minute. The first thing I wanted to mention is that I've finalized the lineup for the Autism Summit coming up soon. Unfortunately, I don't have a graphic for that. Oh well. I've got a link for that in the description, but that's really exciting. I've been busy interviewing 4 or 5 different speakers every week to get to the 25 autistic experts from all over the world that will be part of this conference. So that's been really good. Registrations are open. The link's down there. So that's, yeah, really exciting. You can help, by the way, if by sharing news that this free live event is happening in 1 month from today, 22nd of September. So if you have friends or family or colleagues or that would be interested to hear from really amazing speakers, then yeah, make sure you share that. And like I said, back to this question, actually, one of the topics is on autism and AI. One of the topics is on, it's called Feeling Seen by a Machine. And it's the interesting, I'm going to keep trying. The words will come eventually. Interesting dynamic, for lack of a better word, that I've noticed some people have experienced, where AI can understand you where other people don't. So what that looks like is giving your assistant a prompt and saying, what do you think might be going on here? Does this make sense to you? And it actually says, yes, it does. It perfectly makes sense. And it's actually extremely validating to have someone, even if that someone is AI, validating for someone to validate you. I would normally try and find a different word, but for someone to hear what you're saying and say, yes, of course that makes sense. That's a relatively common thing. It might be this, it might be this, giving different options to help you figure out what your own experience is. And I know I personally find that it's really helpful for generic stuff. I call AI the generic machine. And what it does for me is give me a neutral response. It's like, if I'm responding to this email, what's a generic way to respond to this email? If I am looking for information, what's some generic information that's available out there? And that way, it's doing the work that my brain finds difficult, which is figuring out what other people think. So these large language models have been trained on so much data that they know how other people think. In general, like if you average out the whole of population to the theoretical normal, theoretical typical. So I find it really helpful for lots of things in that regard. Maybe I'm interested too. Maybe I'm interested. Maybe I'll ask the question that I am about to ask. For those of you in the chat at the moment, like, what do you use AI for? Have you found it particularly helpful for any executive function tasks, for any social communication tasks? Like, can you just draft me a response to this email, please, or something like that, where you just need a generic response? And that's actually the difficult part, is making it generic. Like, I can give you a weird and wonderful response that may or may not be what you're expecting, but if my goal in my communication is to be formal or professional or generic in any other sense, then yeah, it can be really helpful. Okay, so I can see a couple of other questions slowly seeping in. That's not the right word. Slowly coming up. So let's have a look. Okay, question from Eleanor de Howler Werewolf Queen. What would you be interested in doing a video explaining what autism myths, lack of empathy, for example, have been debunked by science? Oh yeah, that's an interesting one. There is some scientific backing for certain things, like research into the double empathy problem and things like that. Maybe I could do that, and maybe I could do a good job at that. For me personally, because I'm not an academic, I tend to lean away from doing stuff like that, where I'm pretending like I've read all the literature on something. My brain does not read all the literature on something. My brain gets a summary and hears from a lot of different perspectives. And that's how it works. I absolutely, like, throughout my entire university, for example, I just avoided reading because I don't process information like that. And so maybe I could do something like that. I just need to get over my imposter syndrome, for lack of a better word. That I've probably read a lot more than most people on some of those topics. So maybe it would be a good idea to share some of the research that I've come across. But given that I tend to see like snippets of research and I haven't done a literature review, you can hear how structured and thorough my brain likes to be. I tend to speak in different words rather than trying to say, look, this is backed up by science. I usually say things like, this is backed up by common sense, isn't it? This is backed up by personal experience. Like, you can understand this. You don't even need science to understand this. You can just look at your own life, or you can look at this example, this other real life example, and things like that. So that's my usual style, but thanks for the suggestion. I also saw this question from To Sing His Praise. How do you handle your emotions in a shutdown when you don't even know what they are? Good question. It's important to recognize that some elements of my body are not in my control, right? I can't directly control my hormones. I can't directly control my heartbeat. I can't directly control lots of stuff that's going on automatically in my body. And that means that in a shutdown or a meltdown or anything similar to that, lots of stuff is going on in my body that I don't have direct control over. So in that sense, the primary concern becomes safety. How do I let my body do what it needs to do without hurting myself and without hurting anyone else? It's a crisis management type philosophy of it's on fire. What do we do? Let's just let it burn out in a way that is going to cause the minimum amount of damage. So very often that doesn't require me to know what my emotions are. All I need to know is that this is a serious situation. I need, very often it will tell me what I really want or what I really don't want. So it might be, I really need to get out of this room, or it might be, I really need to stand up, or it might be, I really need to ignore everything that people are telling me at the moment, or I need to put my hands over my ears, or something like that. So emotions might not be very articulate in their message, but they generally have a pretty clear message. I think kids are really good examples of this. Babies don't understand why they cry. They just cry. Are they hungry? Maybe, right? Do they want their special person and they don't have their special person? All they know is something is wrong. I don't like it. And then sort of the body and the emotions take over. And very often, even without that being really specific about what the emotions are telling me, they usually are fairly clear about the direction they want me to go in. So a shutdown, for example, the very, very, very clear direction is stop doing what you're doing. Stop trying to be productive. Stop trying to be in control. You are not in control anymore. You are in overwhelm, and you're going to shut down, and you're not going to be able to do any of those normal things that you would do in another situation if you have more resources. So all right, interesting. So I'm going to have look at everyone who mentioned a lot of people don't use AI very much. That's interesting. I guess it's one of those things where we're kind of it's been such a quick thing that you're either in an early adopter phase, or if you wait 6 months, you'll be like the last person who hasn't used it yet. So I think when things are happening so quickly, it can, like, that curve of no one's using it to everyone's using it can happen so quickly. I know I was one of the very, very last people in my friendship group to get a smartphone, for example. I just didn't want one, and went out of my way to find a phone that did not have a touch screen, for example. Okay. Let's try this question. And by try, I mean put it on screen and then try and read it out and see if I can make sense of it. Is there any self-diagnosis test you would feel confident and comfortable in mentioning for an adult? I mean, I'm comfortable mentioning a couple. Like I said before about the not being an academic, there's quite a few out there that have a reasonable amount of research behind them. But at the same time, I don't really trust any of them. I mean, the kinds of questions they ask, the way that tests like that, especially the self-administered tests, are put together, the way they work is on a statistical average. So they will ask questions that, on average, will get them closer to the result. So I remember doing one, and one of the questions was, "Do you like kissing?" or something. And apparently that was supposed to say, "Oh, well, if the answer is yes, then you're a typical human being, and if the answer is no, well, then maybe you're autistic." Like, well, okay, fair enough. I mean, that's one data point in that sense. 99% of the population likes something, you don't like it, then data point, you're not typical. But it depends on your own sensory profile, and it depends on so many other things that it psychologically, for me, going through those tests are like, I kind of know what they want me to say. And I also know when they're about to get it wrong. A good example is I redid the MBTI test after COVID, and apparently I'm an extrovert now because I ticked the yes please, I would like to leave the house options. So I don't have a specific test that I recommend. There are a bunch out there. If you're curious, do a bunch of them and see what the common themes are, because it's not like there's one that's the best. They're all guessing in different ways, and it's a little bit like the statistical thing of, guessing how many jelly beans are in the jar. If you ask one person, they probably won't have a very accurate result. But if you ask 1,000 people to guess, and then you average all those 1,000 guesses, you're statistically likely to get much closer to the actual number. So yeah, that'll do for that one. This one is a common misconception. If you have autism, does it mean that you're more intelligent? And the answer is no, it absolutely does not mean you're more intelligent. It says nothing about your IQ. Historically, people used to be classified as to autism with an intellectual disability and autism with average to above average IQ. And historically, the autism with average to above average IQ was called high functioning autism. And we don't use that word anymore for lots of reasons, notably that it's just horribly misleading, because you can be autistic and intelligent and have lots and lots of struggles and not appear to be functioning at all. Anyway, that's an entirely new topic, entirely different, deeper topic on why functioning labels aren't used and why lots and lots of autistic people don't use the word functioning at all. I have a friend, and I said something like, on your low functioning days or something like that, and she's like, I don't use that term. I say my low capacity days. I'm like, okay, fine, that makes sense, because it, like, the whole concept of functioning, like, what does that even mean? It basically means doing the things that other people expect me to be able to do. So maybe I can't do those expected things at all my entire life because that's just how my brain is wired. Or maybe I can do certain expected things most of the time, and then on some days or some seconds, I just forget words and don't brain very well at all. So it tends to not be that useful. And so that's why a lot of people are avoiding that word altogether. Here's an interesting question as well. What do you think of the overlap between autism and chronic illness? A lot of experience you've been sharing over the past couple of months remind me of my own experience. This is so I just want to acknowledge that this is something that I've been sharing over the last couple of months. It's very new to me. One of the summit guests is talking about chronic illness. So that's been really interesting to hear firsthand from an autistic advocate with physical disability and chronic illness. And I think it's really helpful. It's a really helpful framework, because what happens when someone says, "How are you?" Well, what if the answer is better than yesterday, but objectively terrible, because I just have a headache every day, all day, every day, for example? And then how do you feel when someone says, I'm so sorry to hear that. I hope next week is better. Well, what if it's not going to be better? What if this chronic suffering, whether it's a diagnosed thing or not, what if it's something you've been dealing with for years or decades, and there's no significant chance that it's going to get significantly better anytime soon? I hope you feel better just doesn't quite have the same ring to it. Like, if I have the flu and someone says, "Oh, I hope you feel better soon," fair enough. Whereas if I have a chronic illness and someone says, "Oh, I'm sorry to hear that you've had a flare up. I hope you feel better soon," like, well, I guess I know where that's coming from, but that would be, it just changes the dynamic when it is so chronic, and when there's nothing to do about it. And so one of the personal shifts for me is to stop asking myself the question, what did I do wrong? Even with the autistic burnout mindset, I could say, I'm trying to avoid burnout. And then when I get into burnout, I could think, what did I do wrong? Whereas with a slightly more chronic illness mindset, it's not, what did I do wrong? Why am I having a flare up now? It's, these things happen. I can't avoid them all the time. I can do my best to avoid them as much as I can, but there's nothing I did wrong. It's just something that happens. So, yeah. Other than that, I don't know much about overlap of specific conditions. I do know there's a very famous phrase, autism doesn't walk alone. So it's very, very, I'm not sure I know a single autistic person who does not have another diagnosis of something, whether it's a chronic health thing or a mental health thing or something as well. So that's interesting. Okay. Let's have another look. Also, what do you think? Do you like my new video background? Give me a thumbs up if you like my new video background or you preferred my old video background. Some of you may know what I'm talking about with that. Okay, I don't quite understand this question. Where I can watch where you are watching. I don't understand that question. Maybe someone else can help with that question in the chat. Okay, I'm high functioning autistic, which is, I've already mentioned why we typically don't use that word anymore. I haven't tested my IQ. Should I go ahead and take the test? Look, if you think it's going to be helpful, go ahead. You can probably hear how skeptical I am. Actually, that's a good point. You can probably hear how skeptical I am with a lot of these psychometric tests. I am being overly harsh on these tests. They are a lot better than I make them out to be. I have a personal thing against these tests because I don't like being misunderstood. And I've had a lifetime of feeling misunderstood, and I don't want to be judged by a test. So when I do a test, my first thing is, did the test get it right? And usually the answer is, it wasn't that accurate. It was helpful. It was roughly accurate, but it wasn't, I know myself better than the test knows me. So that kind of give you some background as to why I probably don't talk very positively about these kind of psychometric tests, including IQ tests. Okay. Very briefly, I won't get into the whole food thing other than to say different people respond differently to food. And I know lots of people who have tried different diets and different things and have found something that seems to help them a significant amount, whether that's cutting something out or so. There's definitely not this diet is helpful for autism thing at all, but exploring what food your body likes and what food is good for you. I've definitely heard people have good results. You never know where the answer is going to be found. There we go. Close enough. Okay. I'm just trying to go through more or less in order at the moment, and we'll see how we go. Will the summit also include a topic of a parent having PTSD as a veteran and raising a 7-year-old diagnosed son with autism and a language impairment? That's quite specific, and no, we don't have something quite so specific. Some of the speakers have had PTSD. Many of them are parents. Some of their children have language delay and high needs and things like that. But yeah, not quite that specific. This is a really good question. What do you say instead of "I hope you feel better" to show you care? I'm interested to ask this summit speaker on disability and physical disability and chronic illness. I think the answer is something like, "I hope you go as well as you can go," or something like that. But language is hard, and it's also just a matter of programming it in so that I have a default, because I'm not going to think about a new phrase every time. So part of just thinking about, what can I say? What can I say instead of "have a nice day"? Well, what if you're not going to have a nice day? Should I wish you a nice day even when that's obviously not helpful? All right, so I'm guessing all of these expressions were from my video background. So great. What I was referring to is well, exactly as Gillian mentioned. I basically tried to make it exactly the same as my old one. So my question is more, how well did I do replicating my old video background? So as some of you on Patreon probably know already, I had to move house recently, which was very stressful. But one of the things, and I actually talk about this in next week's video in a bit more detail, is I put so much effort into this video background that it's actually paying off now because I'm in an entirely new place and I can still set it up relatively easily without thinking too much. This is an interesting one. I'll tell you why in a minute. You always say, I will see you next time at the end of your episodes. Yeah. That question probably relates to like, it's an assumption, right? Like, will I see you next time? So in that case, it's kind of an assumption. It's kind of an invitation. And what I've noticed is that a lot of the autistic population take these things a lot more literally than others. So I used to be a lot more, I used to care a lot more about the literal use of my language and the literal use of other people's language. How, like, if they would say, see you later, I'm like, you're like, I'm in a foreign city and you're serving me a toasty. Why are you saying see you later? I'm not going to see you later. But actually, the more I looked into language, the more I realized our entire language is based on things that no longer mean what they originally meant. Like fantastic doesn't mean fantastic. Terrible doesn't mean wow. Anyway, I think you can get the answer, get the idea of what I'm trying to say here, of how words and phrases take on a new meaning that is well beyond their initial literal meaning. Like breakfast. Like if I have a piece of toast before going out to breakfast, is it still breakfast if I broke my fast earlier that day? So when someone says, do you want to grab a coffee? And I say, yes, I'll have a hot chocolate. It's because coffee has taken on a new meaning to be just a generic word, like to say like a cuppa. So yeah, that's always interesting to notice when other people get really literal about their language and pick up on that. I'm like, oh yeah, no, you're right. That does make sense. Okay, so firstly, thank you for the super something. What are these things called? Thanks. I'm going to actually even attempt to pronounce zip. Why not? Something like that. So yeah, super chats, they're fun. Another topic suggestion. Would you be interested in a video on the lived experiences of viewers with their own comorbidity diagnosis? Yeah, possibly. Every once in a while, I do a panel, just like a panel discussion on something. They tend to be a lot of work, and my brain has really been struggling with stuff at the moment. I've been focusing on my book, and now I've been focusing on the summit. But I do have a couple of ideas for potential panels, which can either be a live stream panel like this or a pre-recorded one. So yeah, that's a good idea, one on comorbidity. Another one that has been suggested to me is something like, is ADHD hiding your autism? Because for a lot of people, it's a lot easier to see ADHD on the outside because it's in your face a lot of the time, whereas it could be masking autism as well. So that was another interesting thought I had for a panel discussion one day. Okay, let's try this one. Do you have any recommendations of others to help me learn more about this new life I've uncovered in my 40s? Someone's going to accuse me of planting this question. It's such a good question. My recommendation is this summit event that I've been putting together for the last month that starts on the 22nd of September. There are 25 really high quality autistic speakers on lots of different topics. So where to go to learn more, it's a free event for the entire week. That's definitely one place. The other tip that I typically have is to find other autistic people like in a community. So that might be a local community. It might be joining as an AFD member, and coming along to our monthly webinars or social catch-ups. We have 2 social catch-ups on Zoom every month. And the reason I say to meet others is because autism is very difficult to understand in theory. It's a lot easier, well, for me at least, it was a lot easier to meet a lot of individual examples, and then, suddenly the theory makes sense because I can see it in so many people. Whereas if you read the supposed stuff about autism, you'll probably get the wrong idea until you actually see it in a person. And then if you go back and like, I can see now what they were trying to describe with that diagnostic criteria or with those things. So yeah. Maybe I'm going reasonably well, but maybe I should quit while I'm ahead before I overdo it. So let's see if I can. This is a dumb idea. I don't need to do this, but I'm doing it anyway because I thought about it. I'm going to share the link to the summit. Registrations are open. I'll be announcing more and more speakers over the next couple of weeks. And just on the topic of language, we also have a non-speaking speaker. I don't know how better to refer to him. Like, what do you call an interview? Like, is it an interview when I'm asking the questions in advance and he's finger spelling the responses? Like, is that the best term? That's actually one of the questions I've asked him. Like, what do we say instead? I know he doesn't like the word chat. He says spell chat, not chat. It's like, don't say, hey, can we have a chat? It's like, hey, can we have a spell chat? I don't chat. I don't speak. I spell. So that's always interesting. Where was I going with that? I think I'm not sure where I was going with that. However, we do have one last question from Eleanor de Howler, Wolf Queen. Very, come on, words. Dedicated fan, watcher, questioner. Oh, come on. I think you know what I mean. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is thank you for this super chat, Eleanor. And let me attempt to read this question off the screen. Would you be interested in a video on lived experiences of viewers with their comorbidity? Oh yeah. Did I answer that before? I think I mentioned that before. Yeah, Phil. Short answer is at the moment I have the summit to look at, but yeah, I definitely love to consider that. And if you can send me an email through the Autism from the Inside website as well. There's a email address with that. Okay, that's a okay. Very quickly. The Zoom call I just mentioned is if you go to the live events section on the autismfromtheinside.com.au website, you'll see the autistic social hangouts, online social hangouts, and that's what I meant by the Zoom call. So there is also a free social Facebook group that also does some volunteer run Zoom calls. So yeah, you might want to check that out too. Okay, well, let's let's leave it there. So thanks everyone. Thanks for your feedback on the background and for all your comments and your constant support. It means that I can do a video like this even when I'm tired because I know that I have your support. Otherwise, I'd be worried that I am not performing enough or something, and it would be a lot more stress and a lot harder. So thanks again for your consistent support with that and ongoing gratitude as well. So I'll leave it there. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time. Let's try this one.